The midnight train pulled into Ardmore, Oklahoma, with a screech of steel on steel that cut through the summer night of 1882. And Zachary Preston stood on that wooden platform like a man who had been carved from the same red earth that stretched for miles beyond the station. His hat low over his eyes, but his gaze fixed on the passenger car door with an intensity that could have burned through iron. He had received the telegram 3 weeks prior, words that had changed everything in the span of a few terse sentences. His brother's widow was coming west, alone now after losing everything in Philadelphia, and she needed a place to start over. Zachary had never met Delilah Warren, knew her only through the letters his brother Samuel had sent before the cholera took him 2 years back, but he had written immediately to tell her she had a home in Oklahoma if she wanted it. What he had not told her, what he could not have explained even to himself until this very moment when the train doors opened, and she stepped down onto the platform with a single worn carpetbag in her hand, was that he had been waiting for something his entire 32 years of life, and somehow he knew with absolute certainty that his waiting was about to end. She was taller than he had imagined, with dark honey-colored hair that had come loose from its pins during the long journey, curling around a face that was all sharp angles and soft shadows in the lamplight. Her dress was black, still in mourning, but there was nothing defeated in the way she held herself as she looked around the empty platform. When her eyes found his, there was a jolt of recognition that defied logic, as if their souls had known each other long before their bodies ever met. Zachary stepped forward, removing his hat in a gesture of respect that felt inadequate for the moment. "Mrs. Warren," he said, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. "I'm Zachary Preston, Samuel's brother." "I know who you are," she said, and her voice had a quality like whiskey and honey, smooth but with an edge that suggested she had learned to protect herself from a world that was not always kind. "Your letters were the only thing that kept me going these last few months. I cannot thank you enough for the invitation, though I hope I will not be a burden on you for long. I intend to find work and make my own way." "You are not a burden," Zachary said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. "You are family. And in this part of the world, family means everything." She smiled then, just a slight curve of her lips, but it was enough to make his heart hammer against his ribs like a wild thing trying to escape. He reached for her bag, and their fingers brushed in the exchange, a contact so brief it should not have mattered, but it sent heat racing up his arm and spreading through his chest, until he felt like he might combust right there on the platform. The ride back to his ranch was quiet at first, the wagon rattling over the dirt roads while the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. Delilah sat beside him, close enough that he could smell the lavender soap she had used despite the long journey, and he found himself hyper-aware of every small movement she made, every breath she took. "Samuel wrote about you often," she said finally, breaking the silence. "He admired you tremendously, said you were the bravest man he ever knew, that you had built something real out here from nothing." Zachary felt his throat tighten at the mention of his brother. "Samuel was the good one," he said quietly. "I was just too stubborn to quit when any sensible man would have given up. This land does not give anything easily. You have to fight for every inch of it." "I am not afraid of fighting," Delilah said, and there was steel in her voice that made him believe her. "I have done plenty of it already. When Samuel died, his family made it very clear that I was no longer welcome in their lives. They took everything we had built together, said that as a woman alone I had no legal claim to any of it. I suppose they were right, at least in the eyes of the law. But I swore then that I would never again be in a position where someone else could dictate the terms of my existence. Out here, a person is judged by what they do, not who they were born as," Zachary said. It is not an easy life, and there are plenty of men who will try to take advantage of a woman alone. But if you are willing to work hard and stand your ground, you can make a place for yourself. I will help you however I can." She turned to look at him fully then, and in the moonlight her eyes were luminous, searching his face for something he hoped she would find. "Why?" she asked. "You do not know me. I could be anyone. I could be a terrible person who will bring nothing but trouble into your life." "You loved my brother," Zachary said simply. "That tells me everything I need to know about your character, and beyond that I can see it in your eyes. You have been hurt, but you have not let it break you. That takes a strength that most people do not possess." They reached the ranch an hour later, and Zachary helped her down from the wagon with a hand at her waist that lingered perhaps a moment longer than propriety dictated. His ranch house was modest, a sturdy structure of wood and stone that he had built with his own hands over the course of several years. But it was clean and well maintained, with a wide porch that looked out over the rolling grasslands that stretched to the horizon. Inside, he showed her to the small bedroom he had prepared, the one that had been Samuel's when he visited years ago. "It is not much," he said apologetically, "but the bed is comfortable and the roof does not leak. I will do my best to make sure you are comfortable here." "It is perfect," Delilah said, and she sounded like she meant it. "I have not had a place that felt like home in a very long time. Thank you, Zachary." The way she said his name, soft and sincere, made something in his chest tighten and release all at once. He wanted to say something meaningful, something that would convey the sudden, overwhelming certainty that she belonged here with him, but he could only nod and back toward the door. "I will let you rest. It has been a long journey. If you need anything, my room is just down the hall." That first night, Zachary lay in his bed and stared at the ceiling, knowing she was just on the other side of the wall, so close and yet impossibly far. He had not expected this, had not anticipated that seeing her would feel like coming home to a place he had never been before. He told himself it was just the loneliness talking, that he had been alone on this ranch for too long and any woman would have had the same effect, but deep down he knew that was a lie. There was something about Delilah specifically, something that called to him on a level beyond reason or logic. The next morning, he woke before dawn as he always did, and went out to tend to the horses and cattle that were his livelihood. He expected Delilah to sleep late, to take time to recover from her journey, but when he came back to the house for breakfast, he found her already in the kitchen, dressed in a simple calico dress with her hair braided back, cooking eggs and bacon over the wood stove. "You do not have to do that," he said, surprised and pleased in equal measure. "You are a guest here." "I am family, you said so yourself," she replied without turning around, "and family does not sit idle while there is work to be done. Besides, I need to earn my keep somehow, at least until I can find proper employment in town." They ate together at the small wooden table, and Zachary found himself watching her more than he ate, fascinated by the graceful way she moved, the small expressions that crossed her face as she looked around the room, taking in her new surroundings. "Tell me about the ranch," she said. "How did you come to be here?" So he told her, the words coming easier than they ever had before. He told her about coming west after the war, about wanting to escape the memories of battlefields and death, about finding this piece of land, and knowing with absolute certainty that this was where he was meant to build his life. He told her about the hard years, the droughts and the harsh winters, the times when he nearly gave up and went back east. But he had persisted, driven by a stubbornness that his mother used to call his greatest flaw and his father called his greatest strength. "And now," Delilah asked, "are you happy here?" It was a simple question, but it cut straight to the heart of something he had been avoiding thinking about for years. "I have been content," he said carefully. "I have built something that matters, created a life that is my own, but happy. I suppose I have been waiting for something, though I could not have told you what it was until last night when you stepped off that train." The words hung between them, too honest and too raw, and he saw her eyes widen slightly, saw the flush that crept into her cheeks. "Zachary," she said, and his name on her lips was both a warning and a promise. "I am still in mourning. I loved Samuel. I cannot simply set that aside." "I know," he said quickly, not wanting her to think he was trying to rush her or dishonor his brother's memory. "I am not asking you to. I just wanted you to know that you are welcome here, not as an obligation or out of duty, but because I want you to be here. Take all the time you need. I will wait." The words echoed the certainty he had felt on the platform. "I have been ready." He had been ready his whole life for this woman, though he had not known it until now. Over the following weeks, they fell into a rhythm that felt natural despite its newness. Delilah insisted on helping with the household chores, and Zachary found that having her presence made everything better. The house that had felt like just a shelter became a home. Meals were no longer something to be endured but moments of connection, conversation flowing easily between them as they learned each other's stories, each other's dreams and fears. She told him about Philadelphia, about growing up in a city that had felt suffocating even as it pretended to offer opportunity. She told him about meeting Samuel at a church social, about how his kindness had been the first real warmth she had known in years. Their marriage had been good, she said, though there was a note in her voice that suggested it had not been passionate, not the kind of love that set the world on fire. "I thought I was content," she said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the grasslands, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "I thought that companionship and respect were enough, and maybe they were, for the life I was living then. But now, being here, I wonder if I was settling for less than I deserved." "You deserve everything," Zachary said, and he meant it with a ferocity that surprised him. "You deserve to be cherished and protected and loved so completely that you never doubt your worth for a single moment." She turned to look at him, and in the fading light her eyes were dark and deep, full of questions and possibilities. "Is that what you would offer me?" she asked quietly. "If you would have me," he said, "but only when you are ready. I meant what I said. I will wait." She reached over and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his in a gesture that felt both innocent and momentous. "I am starting to think," she said, "that I may not need to wait as long as I thought." The next day, Zachary took her into Ardmore to introduce her to the town and help her get her bearings. The town was small but growing, with a main street lined with shops and saloons, a church at one end and a schoolhouse at the other. People stared as they passed, curious about the stranger in their midst, and Zachary found himself standing a little straighter, pride swelling in his chest at having Delilah by his side. They stopped at the general store first, where Mrs. Henderson greeted them with a warm smile and knowing eyes. "So this is the sister-in-law you told me about," she said, looking Delilah up and down with an assessing gaze that missed nothing. "Welcome to Ardmore, dear. I hope you will be very happy here." "Thank you," Delilah said graciously. "Everyone has been very kind so far." "Well, if you need anything, you just let me know," Mrs. Henderson said. "We take care of our own here, and anyone connected to Zachary Preston is one of ours." As they left the store, Delilah looked at him with raised eyebrows. "You are quite well regarded," she observed. "I have been here a long time," Zachary said, feeling a bit embarrassed. "And in a town this size, everyone knows everyone else's business. They are good people for the most part. They will look out for you." They continued down the street, stopping to introduce Delilah to the other shop owners and residents. At the dress shop, A young woman named Clara mentioned that she was looking for help, someone to assist with sewing and serving customers. Delilah's eyes lit up at the prospect. "I can sew," she said eagerly. "My mother taught me when I was young, and I made most of my own clothes in Philadelphia." "Well then, why do not you come by tomorrow and we can discuss the details?" Clara said. "I could certainly use the help, especially with the new orders coming in for the fall season." As they walked back to where Zachary had left the wagon, Delilah was practically glowing with excitement. "I cannot believe it," she said. "I have been here less than a month and already I have the prospect of employment. This place feels like a fresh start in a way nothing else has." "You deserve that fresh start," Zachary said. "You deserve to build a life that is entirely your own." But even as he said it, he hoped that life would include him. Every day that passed, he found himself falling deeper, not just in attraction but in genuine love for who she was as a person. He loved her determination, the way she refused to be defeated by circumstances that would have broken someone with less strength. He loved her laugh, which came more frequently now, bright and unrestrained. He loved the way she hummed while she cooked, the way she talked to his horses like they were old friends, the way she sat on the porch in the evenings and watched the stars with an expression of wonder that suggested she was seeing them for the first time. One afternoon, about 6 weeks after her arrival, a storm rolled in from the west, dark clouds piling up on the horizon and the wind picking up until it howled around the corners of the house. Zachary was out checking on the livestock when the first drops began to fall, and by the time he made it back to the house he was soaked through, water streaming from his hat and his clothes plastered to his body. Delilah met him at the door with a towel and a look of concern. "You are going to catch your death," she scolded, pulling him inside. "Get out of those wet things immediately." He went to his room and changed into dry clothes, and when he came back out, she had hot coffee waiting for him. They stood in the kitchen as the storm raged outside, lightning flashing through the windows and thunder shaking the walls. "I have always loved storms," Delilah said, watching the rain sheet down the glass. "They feel like the world is being washed clean, like everything gets a chance to start fresh." "Is that what you want?" Zachary asked, moving closer to her. "A chance to start fresh?" She turned to face him, and they were standing so close now that he could feel the warmth radiating from her body, could see the rapid pulse at the base of her throat. "I think," she said slowly, "that I have already started fresh. Being here with you, it feels like I am finally becoming the person I was always meant to be." "Delilah," he said, and her name was a prayer and a question all at once. "I know I said I would wait, and I will, but I need you to know that I am in love with you. Completely and utterly in love with you. I think I have been since the moment I saw you on that platform." Her breath caught, and for a moment she just stared at him, her eyes wide and searching. Then she reached up and touched his face, her palm warm against his cheek. "I am in love with you too," she whispered. "I have been fighting it, telling myself it is too soon, that I am betraying Samuel's memory, but the truth is that what I feel for you is nothing like what I felt for him. This is bigger, deeper, more real than anything I have ever known." He kissed her then, unable to hold back any longer, and she melted into him like she had been made to fit perfectly in his arms. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but it quickly deepened into something that spoke of need and longing and a connection that went beyond the physical. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "I know it is fast, I know people will talk, but I do not care. I want to spend every day of the rest of my life with you. I want to build a future together, raise a family, grow old watching sunsets from that porch. Say yes." "Yes," she said without hesitation, laughing through the tears that were streaming down her face. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Ardmore, with half the town in attendance. Delilah wore a dress she had made herself from cream-colored silk, and Zachary wore his best suit, the one he had bought years ago and never had occasion to wear. Mrs. Henderson cried openly during the ceremony, and even the gruff old rancher who owned the spread next to Zachary's had to wipe his eyes. The reception was held at the ranch, tables set up in the yard laden with food that the whole community had contributed. There was music and dancing, and Zachary held Delilah in his arms as they swayed to a fiddle tune, feeling like the luckiest man alive. "Are you happy?" he asked her as they danced, needing to hear her say it. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she said, and the radiance in her face told him she meant every word. That night, alone in the house that was now truly theirs, they came together with a tenderness and passion that left them both breathless. Zachary took his time learning every inch of her, committing to memory the sounds she made, the way she responded to his touch. And when they finally lay tangled together in the darkness, her head on his chest and his hand stroking through her hair, he felt a sense of peace and completion he had never known before. "I love you," he murmured into the quiet. "I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "I love you too," she whispered back. "You have given me a life I never dared to dream of. I will spend the rest of my days making sure you never regret choosing me." "Impossible," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done." Life settled into a new rhythm after that, one colored by joy and contentment, but also by hard work and determination. Delilah continued working at the dress shop 3 days a week, and the rest of the time she helped Zachary with the ranch. She proved to be a natural with the horses, gentle but firm, and the animals responded to her with a trust that usually took months to build. 4 months into their marriage, Delilah came to him with news that made his heart leap. "I am with child," she said, her voice trembling with equal parts excitement and nervousness. "The doctor confirmed it this morning." Zachary swept her up into his arms, spinning her around in a circle while she laughed. "A baby," he said wonderingly. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" She asked, and he could hear the need for reassurance in her voice. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," he said, setting her down gently and cradling her face in his hands. "You have given me more than I ever dared to hope for. A home, a family, a reason to wake up grateful every single day. I cannot wait to meet this child we have made together." The pregnancy was not easy. Delilah was sick in the mornings for the first few months, and as she grew larger, she struggled with the heat of the Oklahoma summer. But through it all she remained strong, determined to not let the discomfort slow her down more than necessary. Zachary became fiercely protective, hovering over her in a way that she found both endearing and occasionally frustrating. "I am pregnant, not fragile," she reminded him one evening when he tried to stop her from hanging laundry. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time. I am not going to break." "I know," he said, looking sheepish. "I just cannot stand the thought of anything happening to you or the baby. You are my whole world now." She softened at that, coming over to kiss him gently. "We are going to be fine," she said. "I am strong and this baby is strong. You do not need to worry so much." But worry he did, right up until the cold January night when her labor began in earnest. The midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Tucker who had delivered half the babies in the county, arrived quickly and took charge of the situation with calm efficiency. Zachary was banished to the main room, left to pace and fret while the hours stretched on interminably. He could hear Delilah crying out in pain, and it took every ounce of self-control, He possessed not to burst into the bedroom and demand to be by her side. Finally, just as the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon, he heard a different sound, the thin, reedy wail of a newborn baby. His heart stopped, then started again with a painful thud, and he was halfway to the bedroom door when Mrs. Tucker emerged, a smile on her weathered face. "You have a son," she said. "A big, healthy boy with lungs like a bull, and your wife did beautifully. She is tired but well. You can go in now." Zachary pushed past her, his eyes immediately finding Delilah propped up in the bed, exhausted but glowing with a small bundle cradled in her arms. She looked up when he entered, and the smile she gave him was radiant. "Come meet your son," she said softly. He approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the tiny red-faced baby in her arms. His son. His and Delilah's. The wave of love that washed over him was so intense it almost brought him to his knees. "He is perfect," Zachary said, his voice rough with emotion. "You are amazing. I am so proud of you." "What should we name him?" Delilah asked. "I was thinking Samuel, after your brother." "If that is all right with you." Zachary felt his throat tighten. "Samuel Preston," he said. "It is perfect. My brother would have been honored." They called him Sam from the beginning, and he grew into a sturdy, curious child with his mother's eyes and his father's stubborn determination. Zachary found that fatherhood suited him, though it was more exhausting than any work he had ever done. But watching his son grow, seeing the wonder in Sam's eyes as he discovered the world, made every sleepless night worth it. Delilah bloomed in motherhood, though she admitted privately to Zachary that it was harder than she had anticipated. "No one tells you how much of yourself you lose," she said one evening after finally getting Sam down to sleep. "How you stop being just you and become someone's mother first and foremost." "You are still you," Zachary said, pulling her close. "You are still the woman I fell in love with, still strong and independent and beautiful beyond words. Being a mother is just another facet of who you are, not the entirety of your existence." "I love you for saying that," she said, kissing him. "Sometimes I just need to be reminded." When Sam was 2 years old, Delilah found out she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and when their daughter was born on a warm spring evening in 1886, it felt like their family was complete. They named her Rose, and she had her father's dark hair and a personality that was fierce from the very beginning. Life was full and busy, the ranch thriving and the children growing, and Zachary sometimes had to stop and marvel at how much his existence had changed in just a few short years. The loneliness that had defined so much of his life was gone, replaced by the constant noise and chaos of a house full of love. One summer evening when Sam was 5 and Rose was 3, they all sat on the porch together watching the sunset. Sam was practicing his letters on a slate, determined to be ready for school in the fall, while Rose chased fireflies in the yard, her laughter bright and clear in the warm air. Delilah leaned against Zachary's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "Did you ever imagine," she asked, "that night when you were waiting on the platform, that this is where we would end up?" "I knew," he said simply. "Maybe not all the details, but I knew that you were going to change my life. I knew that my waiting was finally over." "I am glad you were there," she said. "I am glad you were ready, because I do not think I would have had the courage to do this alone. You gave me a home when I had nowhere else to go, and you gave me a love I did not even know I was missing." "You gave me everything," Zachary said, kissing the top of her head. "A reason to wake up in the morning, a purpose beyond just surviving. You made me understand what it means to truly live." Years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. The ranch expanded as Zachary's herd grew, and they hired on a couple of hands to help with the workload. Sam grew into a serious boy who loved reading and learning, while Rose was wild and free, more comfortable on horseback than anywhere else. When Sam was 10 and Rose was 8, Delilah surprised Zachary with the news that she was pregnant again. "I thought we were done," she said with a laugh. "I thought Rose would be our last, but apparently life had other plans. How do you feel about it?" Zachary asked, searching her face for any sign of distress. They were both older now, in their early 40s, and he knew that pregnancy at this age carried more risks. "Terrified," she admitted, "but also excited. Maybe this is a gift, one last chance to experience all of this again." The pregnancy was harder than the previous two, and Zachary spent most of those 9 months in a state of low-grade anxiety. But when their second daughter was born in the spring of 1891, healthy and screaming her displeasure at being thrust into the world, his relief was overwhelming. They named her Grace, and she was a happy baby who smiled constantly and seemed to find joy in everything. Sam and Rose adored their baby sister, fighting over who got to hold her and help take care of her. "Our family is complete now," Delilah said one night as they lay in bed, Grace sleeping peacefully in the cradle beside them. 3 children, a thriving ranch, a community that feels like home. I could not ask for anything more." "Neither could I," Zachary agreed. "You have given me a life beyond my wildest dreams." But life had one more challenge in store for them. When Grace was 2 years old, a drought hit Oklahoma, the worst in living memory. The grass turned brown and brittle, the creek that ran through Zachary's property dried to a trickle, and the cattle began to die. Zachary worked himself to exhaustion trying to keep the ranch afloat, hauling water from the town well, rationing what little feed they had left. Other ranchers were selling out, packing up their families and heading east or further west in search of better prospects, but Zachary refused to give up. He had built this life from nothing, and he would be damned if he would let a drought take it away. Delilah stood by him through it all, never complaining even as their savings dwindled, and the children sometimes went to bed hungry. She took in sewing work, mending and altering clothes for the townspeople, and every penny she earned went into keeping the ranch running. "We will get through this," she told him one night when he was at his lowest, when he was seriously considering selling the herd at a loss and starting over somewhere else. "We have survived worse. We will survive this too." "I do not know if I have the strength," he admitted, the words tearing out of him. "I am so tired, Delilah. I am tired of fighting, tired of watching everything we have built slowly crumble away." "Then lean on me," she said fiercely, taking his face in her hands and forcing him to meet her eyes. "You have carried this family for years. Let me carry you for a while. We are partners, Zachary. We face everything together, the good and the bad." Her strength gave him the will to keep going, and when the rains finally came that fall, breaking the drought in a series of violent storms that left the land soaked and green once more, Zachary broke down and wept with relief. They had lost more than half their herd, and it would take years to build back up to where they had been, but they had survived. "I could not have done it without you," he told Delilah as they stood in the rain, letting it wash over them. "You saved me, saved our family. I do not know how I can ever repay that." "You do not have to repay anything," she said. "That is what love is, being there for each other when things are hard, not giving up even when it seems impossible. You have done the same for me countless times." As the years continued to pass, their children grew and began to forge their own paths. Sam, at 18, announced that he wanted to go to college in Kansas to study law. Zachary was surprised but proud, recognizing that his son had ambitions that extended beyond ranching. "I want to make a difference," Sam said earnestly. "I want to fight for people who do not have anyone else to fight for them. You and Mother taught me that family and community matter, that we have an obligation to look out for those who cannot look out for themselves." "Then you go and make us proud," Zachary said, clasping his son's shoulder. "We will be here whenever you need us." Rose, at 16, had no interest in leaving. She was a natural with horses and cattle, and she made it clear that she intended to take over the ranch eventually. "I cannot imagine being anywhere else," she said. "This land is in my blood." Grace, at 8, was still young but showing signs of having inherited her mother's creative talents. She was always drawing or making things with her hands, and Delilah predicted she would be an artist of some sort when she grew up. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm as Zachary and Delilah entered their 50s. They had weathered storms, both literal and figurative, had built a life and a family that was the envy of many. The ranch was prosperous again, the years of drought just a painful memory, and their children were happy and thriving. One evening in 1899, 17 years after that night when Delilah had stepped off the midnight train, they sat together on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. Sam was home from college for the summer, Rose was out checking on the herd, and Grace was inside reading by lamplight. "Do you ever regret it?" Zachary asked, the question that had been hovering unspoken between them for years finally finding voice. "Coming here, marrying me so quickly, building this life. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had stayed in Philadelphia?" Delilah looked at him in genuine surprise. "Not for a single moment," she said. "Philadelphia was never home, not really. Home is here with you, with our children, on this land we have built together. Everything that came before feels like it happened to a different person. My real life, my true life, began the night I stepped off that train and saw you waiting for me." "I told you I had been ready," Zachary said, remembering that moment with crystal clarity. "I did not know what I was ready for, but I knew it was you." "And I did not know what I was looking for," Delilah said. "But I found it anyway. I found home. I found love. I found myself." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. From inside the house came the sound of Grace's laughter at something in her book, and in the distance they could see Rose riding back toward the house, sitting easy in the saddle like she had been born there. "We did all right," Zachary said finally. "Did we not?" "We did better than all right," Delilah said, reaching over to take his hand. "We built something real, something lasting. We created a family and a legacy that will continue long after we are gone. We loved each other with everything we had and raised children who know what it means to be strong and kind and courageous. I would say we did just about as well as two people possibly could." As the years advanced into the new century, Zachary and Delilah watched their children mature into adults they were immensely proud of. Sam graduated from law school and opened a practice in Ardmore, dedicating himself to helping farmers and small ranchers who were being taken advantage of by larger interests. He married a schoolteacher named Margaret, and they had 2 children of their own. Rose took over the day-to-day running of the ranch, proving herself to be just as capable as her father, if not more so. She had a gift for understanding the land and the animals, and under her management, the ranch continued to thrive. She married one of the ranch hands, a quiet man named Thomas who adored her and never tried to diminish her authority. Grace, true to Delilah's predictions, pursued her art with single-minded determination. She studied at a school in St. Louis and returned to Oklahoma to paint landscapes that captured the wild beauty of the territory. Her work began to sell in galleries back east, bringing recognition to both her talent and the region that inspired it. Through it all, Zachary and Delilah remained the center around which the family orbited. Their love had not dimmed with time but had instead deepened into something that was both comfortable and profound. They knew each other's rhythms, could anticipate each other's needs, finished each other's sentences without conscious thought. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1907, their children threw them a party at the ranch, inviting half the county. There was food and music and dancing, and at one point Sam stood up to make a toast. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass, "who taught me that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every single day. That family is worth fighting for, that the land we stand on is sacred, and that integrity matters more than anything else. Thank you for the life you have given us, for the example you have set. May we all be so lucky as to find what you two have found in each other." As everyone raised their glasses and cheered, Zachary looked at Delilah and saw tears streaming down her face. He pulled her close, not caring who saw, and kissed her forehead. "Happy anniversary, my love," he murmured. "Here is to 25 more." "I will hold you to that," she said with a watery laugh. But life, as it always does, had its own plans. When Zachary was 63, he was thrown from a horse during a storm, landing badly and breaking several ribs. The injuries themselves were not life-threatening, but they led to pneumonia that settled in his lungs and refused to let go. Delilah nursed him tirelessly, sitting by his bedside day and night, but she could see him slipping away despite her best efforts. On a cold February night, with his family gathered around him, Zachary took her hand and squeezed it weakly. "I am not ready," he whispered. "I am not ready to leave you." "Then do not," she said fiercely, though she knew it was not that simple. "Fight this. You have never given up on anything in your life. Do not start now." "I have had a good life," he said, his voice fading. "Better than I deserved. You gave me that. You and the children, this ranch, this community. I have been blessed beyond measure." "Zachary, please," she said, and she was crying now, great sobs that shook her whole body. "I love you," he said, and those were his last words before he closed his eyes and slipped away. The grief nearly broke Delilah. For weeks after the funeral, she moved through the house like a ghost, unable to eat or sleep, lost without the man who had been her anchor for over 25 years. Her children worried about her, taking turns staying at the ranch to make sure she was not alone, but nothing they did seemed to reach her. It was Grace, surprisingly, who finally got through to her. She came to the ranch one morning with her paints and her easel and set them up on the porch. "Paint with me, Mother," she said. "You always said you wished you had time to paint. Well, now you have time, so paint." "I cannot," Delilah said. "I cannot create anything right now. There is nothing but emptiness inside me." "Then paint the emptiness," Grace said. "Paint the grief, paint the memories, paint what you are feeling. Just get it out of yourself and onto the canvas." So Delilah painted. At first her work was dark and chaotic, angry slashes of color that reflected her inner turmoil. But slowly, gradually, the paintings began to change. Light crept in at the edges, and she found herself painting memories. Zachary standing on the platform that first night, the look in his eyes when he had first told her he loved her, the way he had held their children, the 1,000 small moments that had made up their life together. The painting became a kind of therapy, a way to process her grief and honor Zachary's memory. And as the weeks turned into months, she found that while the pain never entirely went away, it became bearable. She could think about him without breaking down, could remember their life together with gratitude instead of just sorrow. 2 years after Zachary's death, on a warm summer evening, Delilah sat on the porch alone watching the sunset. The house was quiet, all the children having returned to their own lives, though they visited often. She missed Zachary with an ache that had become her constant companion, but she also felt his presence in everything around her. She thought about that night so many years ago when she had stepped off the midnight train, scared and alone and uncertain about what the future held. She thought about the man who had been waiting for her, a man she did not know but who had offered her safety and kindness without expecting anything in return. She thought about the life they had built together, the love they had shared, the family they had raised. It had not always been easy, but it had been real and it had been theirs. And she thought about Zachary's last words to her, the ones she had not shared with anyone else. After he had said he loved her, right before he closed his eyes, he had smiled and whispered, "It was you." From the very first moment, it was always you. A shooting star streaked across the darkening sky, and Delilah smiled through her tears. "It was you too," she said softly to the empty air. "It was always you. Thank you for waiting for me. Thank you for being ready." She sat there as the stars came out one by one, and for the first time since Zachary's death, she felt something like peace settle over her. Their love story was over, but its echoes would continue through their children and grandchildren, through the land they had worked together, through the legacy they had built. When she finally went inside, she picked up the photograph on the mantel, the one taken on their wedding day. They looked so young, so full of hope and promise. She traced Zachary's face with her finger, remembering everything. "Until we meet again," she whispered. Delilah lived for another 12 years, dying peacefully in her sleep at the age of 74 in 1921. In those years, she saw the birth of more grandchildren, watched her children achieve things she had never dreamed possible, and continued to paint her memories onto canvas. The ranch remained in the family, passed down to Rose and then to Rose's children, just as Zachary had always hoped it would be. On the day of Delilah's funeral, all three of her children stood together in the cemetery as she was laid to rest beside Zachary. The headstones were simple, but Sam had insisted on an inscription that captured the essence of their parents' story. On Zachary's stone it read, "He waited, and he was ready." On Delilah's, "She rode into his life on a midnight train and changed everything." As the family gathered at the ranch after the service, Sam told his own children the story of how their grandparents had met, how a woman fleeing a painful past had found unexpected love with a cowboy who had been waiting for something he could not name. "They proved that love does not have to be complicated," he said. "Sometimes it is as simple as being ready when the right person arrives. Sometimes it is about having the courage to step into the unknown and trust that you will find your way." They built a life from nothing, and they did it together, and that is the greatest legacy anyone could leave. The sun was setting over the grasslands, painting the sky in those familiar shades of gold and crimson that Zachary and Delilah had watched together for so many years. In the distance, a train whistle sounded, the midnight train still making its run through Ardmore just as it had that fateful night in 1882. And if you stood very still and listened closely, you might have heard, carried on the evening breeze, the echo of two hearts that had found each other against all odds and built something that would last forever. A love story written in the red dust of Oklahoma, in the stubbornness of two people who refused to give up on each other, in the simple truth that sometimes the right person arrives exactly when you need them most. The ranch continued on, generation after generation, and every child born into the Preston family learned the story of how it all began. They learned about courage and love, about waiting and being ready, about the magic that can happen when two souls recognize each other across a crowded platform on a summer night. And they learned that the greatest love stories are not the ones that come easily, but the ones that are built day by day, through hard work and dedication, through joy and sorrow, through all the ordinary moments that somehow add up to something extraordinary. Zachary had been right that night when he stood on the platform. He had been ready. Ready for love, ready for family, ready for a life that would exceed everything he had imagined. And Delilah had been brave enough to step off that train and into the unknown, to trust a stranger who offered her kindness, to build a new life from the ashes of her old one. Together, they had created something that would outlast them both, a legacy of love that would echo through the generations. Their story became a part of the land itself, woven into the very fabric of Ardmore and the surrounding territory, a reminder that love can be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the best things in life come to those who are willing to wait and to be ready when the moment finally arrives. The midnight train still runs through Ardmore, carrying passengers to destinations unknown, and if you stand on that platform on a summer night, you might feel the presence of a cowboy who once waited there, his heart full of hope and certainty, ready for the woman who would change his life forever. And somewhere beyond the stars, beyond time and space, two souls continue their dance, united in a love that death could not diminish, bound together by the promise they made to each other so many years ago on a platform in Oklahoma, when she rode into his life on a midnight train and he was ready to catch her.